Grief is the Price We Pay. Written by Skiffy. Chapter 5. Traitor. Spike was immensely relieved to see Thorax return safe and sound, and with the needed items requested. "Oh, thanks, Celestia!" he declared when Thorax galloped up to where the dragon had been hiding, waiting for him. "I was getting worried that you had gotten caught or worse."
Nope. Nobody even seemed to suspect me, luckily,
Thorax said, as he began to drop his crystal guard disguise.
But we still need to hurry and get out of here. I overheard plans that they intend to storm the frozen wastes around the Crystal Empire to chase out any changelings they find hiding out here. And I got the strong impression they'd use force to do it.
Spike groaned at this news. Oh, of course they are. Why would I expect them to do anything else at this point? He opened Thorax's saddlebags and pulled out the train pass and a bag of disguises. Well, today was going to be the best day to hightail it out of here anyway. Unless this mess has changed that, Twilight and Starlight are scheduled to head back to Ponyville tomorrow. Somehow, I think there'd be trouble if we wound up sharing a train with them. Thorax hesitated to respond, debating whether or not he wanted to tell Spike the conversation between Twilight, Starlight, and Shining Armor right now as well. He instead chose to bring up another subject.
So, how do we want to get on that train anyway?
If my train pass is still good, then getting on the train won't be the hard part, Spike explained as he opened the bag of disguises and quickly began to don a small trench coat and sunglasses. The hard part will be getting both of us back over the Crystal Empire's borders so we can even reach the train. Thorax considered the idea for a moment.
I think I have an idea for that,
he said, and pulled out the cloak he had also snagged while still in the palace.
Think if I draped this over my back, you'd be able to hide under it without drawing attention?
Spike, in the process of pulling out a fedora and a puffy orange wig, studied the cloak for a second. I guess, he said, feeling the garment with his claws. But why? What are you thinking?
I noticed when coming back here that some of the guards patrolling the border are wearing cloaks,
Thorax explained, draping the cloak over himself.
You know, for the cold. So I figure they won't see anything amiss about a guard passing through that's wearing such a cloak.
He transformed back into the crystal guard once more.
So, if we can just hide you under it in such a way that I can smuggle you in it without drawing attention, we're in. The only other thing we would need to protect ourselves from then is the spell they're using to check out anyone trying to enter the Empire. Spike perked up in alarm at this. Spell? Some sort of anti-changeling spell they've tried to devise. But honestly, because I managed to slip past it just fine without being discovered, it's rubbish. I don't know if the spell would be capable of detecting you hiding though. So to play it safe, I'm going to cast a small spell of my own on you that should mask you from detection by it. He proceeded to cast a spell on his friend with his sign magic, the spell doing little more outwardly than briefly tickle the dragon. Then, once we're over the border, we can duck into an alley or something, and I can switch into some other pony disguise, and we can head for the train station.
Spike grinned in approval as he donned his wig and hat on top of his head. Sounds like as good as a plan as any. It took them a bit to figure out how exactly Spike was going to hide under the cloak, though. At first, Spike figured he could just climb onto Thorax's back while disguised as the Crystal Guard, and then drape the cloak over top of him, hiding him from sight. But the saddlebags Thorax had brought wouldn't fit over both Thorax's back and Spike's, and draping the cloak over the saddlebags looked peculiar enough that they agreed it would only draw unwanted attention, the very last thing they wanted at this point. Furthermore, Thorax feared hiding Spike on his back made his back look a bit too lumpy to be believable. Spike then noticed that the cloak, when draped over Thorax's back, was large enough to almost reach down to Thorax's hooves, and thought maybe he ought to hide under Thorax instead. They quickly noticed a problem when Thorax saw that the cloak didn't reach down far enough and left Spike's feet still visible. But Thorax was able to quickly adjust this by tweaking the height of his crystal guard disguise a little, making him short enough that the hem of the cloak was practically dragging the ground. Doing this meant Spike had to be bent over a little in order to be able to hide under Thorax, but with the cloak draped over the disguised changeling, they were satisfied that Spike could not be seen this way. After taking a moment to coordinate their walking, so Spike could walk in step with Thorax without the two accidentally tripping each other up, the two then nervously made for the Empire's border, hoping for the best. From where he was hidden under Thorax, his friend's warm belly brushing against his head, Spike naturally couldn't see much of what lay outside the cloak. Thus, it was hard for him to see when they would near the border. Nonetheless, the dragon could still tell as they drew closer, because he could hear Thorax's breathing turn from long and relaxed into something more quick and anxious. Shortly thereafter, he also felt the disguised changeling's muscles slowly grow tense, ready to act if things went wrong. But they didn't. Again, approaching the border from an inconspicuous angle for a presumed guard on patrol, the other guards guarding the border made no attempt to stop them, having assumed that Thorax was one of their own. The most reaction Spike heard was one of the guards giving Thorax a curt greeting as they passed, and another asking if they were coming off of patrol, which Thorax returned with simple answers to both guards in a gruff voice so to keep up appearances. But that was it. Spike didn't even notice if the guards cast a spell Thorax spoke of or not, which just told him that even if they had, it clearly hadn't given them away. So soon they had crossed the border, and Spike watched the small patch of snow he could see underneath the cloak as they walked gradually, transform into the more familiar polished crystal flagstones that were the trademark of streets in the Crystal Empire.
"We're in,"
Thorax whispered aloud, sounding relieved.
"Just a second while I find an alley where you can duck into."
It didn't take long for him to slip between an inconspicuous gap that existed between the two buildings. Once there, Spike was allowed to slip out from beneath the cloak, proceeding to don the fedora and wig back onto his head, having removed them so to fit underneath Thorax. The changeling, meanwhile, transformed into the usual magical burst of cyan flames, directly from the guard disguise to the disguise of the dark gray stallion they had devised in the cave earlier. He had not removed the cloak at all in doing so, but despite that, he generally looked like just another one of the ponies in town. If Spike didn't know better, he would have said that Thorax looked perfectly normal.
"Ready?"
Thorax asked as they finished adjusting their disguises. Spike, head now largely hidden underneath the hat, wig, and sunglasses, nodded. Ready.
"Then let's go. You lead the way to the train station."
They slipped back out into the streets by following the alley to where it opened up on the other side of the row of buildings, and were able to slip in with the thin traffic currently on the streets without problem. Spike was able to get his first good look around the Crystal Empire for the first time since he was cast out, but naturally found that little had changed. Few ponies were out and about outside of their homes despite the hour, but this could be attributed to the fact that the crystal ponies were still hiding in fear from the changeling they knew was still out there and at large, possibly planning to attack. In reality, the changeling was already among them, and was only planning to escape the Empire undetected. But Spike shoved this thought down to join the many other bitter thoughts on the subject that had been collecting in his mind. After a block or so, Spike eventually noticed that what few ponies were on the streets seemed quite glum. He quietly voiced his observation out loud to Thorax.
"I noticed that too,"
Thorax agreed, gazing at one sullen-looking pony as they trotted past. He turned to look around for a possible explanation.
"The whole city just seems to be in a gloomy mood. In fact, even the amount of love the Empire is producing has decreased, though I didn't really stop to think about why."
Spike was intrigued by the thoughts that the crystal ponies had become so glum it was cutting into its trademark love supply. Wonder what's causing it. Thorax suddenly stopped, his gaze turning to look at a nearby stand.
"I've got a hunch,"
he stated. Spike didn't like the sounds of Thorax's tone when he had said that. but he found himself following the disguised changeling's gaze at a newspaper stand. Despite already having a pretty good idea of what he was going to find, the dragon trotted over and picked up one of the newspapers to look at his front page. The bold and unfriendly headline summed it up nicely. Spike, the brave and glorious, banished. Famed hero actually traitor? Spike had wanted to keep reading, but found that the accusing headline was all he could focus on, glaring at the offending print as he felt his chest heat up in a fury. He had even realized he was just about to ball up the newspaper in anger when Thorax gently placed a hoof on his shoulder. Now, keep calm, Thorax advised as he motioned for the dragon to return the newspaper. He then glanced up at the stand's proprietor, who had been watching them idly.
Sorry about that,
he apologized on Spike's behalf.
He's been pretty shaken up by all of this.
The great pony nodded in understanding. I can certainly relate to that, he admitted glumly, and didn't seem to think more about it.
Come on,
Spark? Thorax urged, quickly covering up their identities as he led the little dragon away and back on course.
We were heading for the train station, remember?
Spike let himself be led away, but it didn't lessen his rage any as he continued to think about the headline. Traitor, he muttered to himself after a moment. They're calling me a traitor!
Spike?
Thorax warned urgently as he kept alert for any ponies that might overhear. Fortunately, there were none quite close enough for the moment. I'm not the traitor! Spike continued on in a growl. He shot a glare at a group of crystal ponies that were chatting away across the street. They are!
I know,
Thorax hissed urgently, anxious to get his friend to calm down.
But this isn't the time nor the place to be discussing it.
Spike snorted in frustration, but he nodded and spoke no more on the subject. Grief is the Price We Pay, written by Skiffy. Chapter 6, Silver Lining. They eventually arrived at the train station, empty for the moment as it would be a while still before the next train. As Thorax stopped to check the schedule posted on the wall to see how long they would have to wait, Spike glumly sat himself on a nearby bench, gazing out at the train tracks and the frozen waste that had faded into view beyond.
Looks like it'll be about another hour before the next train arrives,
Thorax noted as he moved to join Spike on the bench. He gazed warily to where a member of the Crystal Guard stood at the edge of the platform, on the lookout for trouble, seeing the Empire was still on high alert, but thankfully he had yet to even really pay much attention to the two.
Hopefully nothing goes wrong while we wait.
Spike merely grunted half-heartedly and didn't make any other response. He sat in silence for a moment, Thorax keeping guard as he kept an eye out for any trouble. So, Spark, huh? Spike suddenly spoke out loud. Thorax glanced at him, confused.
Huh?
Back at the newspaper stand, you called me Spark.
Oh.
The changeling shrugged his disguised shoulders.
Well, I couldn't really call you by your real name right then, now could I?
I suppose not. They fell silent again for another moment, but Thorax's gaze was drawn back to his fellow exile, when Spike snuffled suddenly and lifted his sunglasses, briefly wiping his eyes with one arm quickly. Thorax felt his heart sink a little in sympathy at the sight.
I'm sorry, Spike,
he murmured.
This is all tearing you apart, isn't it?
Getting falsely branded as a traitor would do that to you, Spike responded bitterly. Thorax gazed at the guard briefly to ensure they weren't going to get overheard.
Look, I get how you feel, Spike. I really do,
he said, shifting his hoofs awkwardly as he felt there was something more he should do to try and comfort his friend than merely talk. But due to his inexperience at the matter as a changeling, he wasn't sure how.
I'm a traitor to my own race, you know. It was the moment I chose to leave the hive to try and befriend ponies.
Yeah, but you don't have to deal with the constant reminder of that surrounding you all the time.
I guess I don't.
Thorax hung his head. Spike sighed. I'm sorry, Thorax. I don't mean to take it out on you. It's just tough. He made a shuddering breath as he struggled to keep his emotions in check. I'm still getting used to the idea that all the ponies I considered the best of friends and allies just yesterday now all think of me as little more than an outcast. The fact that they're all doing it without much remorse just makes it hurt more. Thork stared at his disguised hooves for a long moment.
Princess Twilight looked like she was showing remorse,
He said aloud suddenly. When Spike blinked and looked up at Thorax with a questioning surprise, the changeling let out a deep sigh.
When I was in the Crystal Castle getting your things, I overheard her,
Starlight and Prince Shining Armor talking, he confessed. Spike blinked again. Talking about what? He asked, even though he already had a good idea.
They were, I guess, arguing about letting you go with me, whether or not it was really the thing to do.
Spike hesitated. And? Thorax closed his eyes sadly.
They still decided they made the right choice about it.
Seeing Spike turn away, he continued.
I'm sorry, Spike. I wasn't sure if I should even tell you, but...
No, it's okay. Spike interrupted. He took another shuddering inhale as he again worked to keep his bottled up emotions from bursting forth. It's probably better I know all this up front, so I know where I really stand on things. Thorax was quiet for a moment.
If it helps, Princess Twilight really did seem very distressed about it. She looked like she was taking it hard.
Not hard enough to raise a hoof to stop it, though. Thorax studied the troubled dragon, who still had his back turned to the changeling for a moment, while feeling troubled himself.
You two were close, weren't you? You and Twilight?
Spike squeezed his eyes shut to hold back tears. Like siblings, he managed to choke out. That's what I don't get, Thorax. Why did she do it? Do I really mean so little to her? He trod off, his voice cracking as his emotions overwhelmed his ability to speak further. Thorax shifted awkwardly again wanting to do something to comfort his one and only friend that had sacrificed so much to stand up by him. He remembered what Starlight had done to try and comfort Twilight back in the castle, and clumsily attempted to mimic it by wrapping one hoof around Spike's shoulders. It was enough for Spike, who latched on to the welcome hoof and leaned against Thorax's side, taking a moment to silently shed a few tears over the matter. We should come up with an alias for you too. Spike suddenly spoke up, after a bit, abruptly changing the subject. Thorax blinked, looking at the dragon.
Huh?
So we can keep from getting caught as exiles. We should come up with aliases to go by so nobody realizes who we really are. Spike sat up. We've already got that Spark name for me, which I guess we'll do. Now we should come up with one for you too.
Oh.
Thorax hummed, understanding. He tapped his chin as he thought. Spike studied the changeling's disguise for a moment, looking for inspiration for a name much like how he had come up with the Crystal Hoof name. Maybe Gray Fur? No. Cloakwear? No, that's silly. Neon Mane. That sounds ridiculous. Crystal Flank? No, better not. Maybe Emerald Cut? That doesn't sound too bad. Thornton, Thorax suddenly decided, interrupting. He glanced at Spike.
That's a pony name, isn't it?
A bit of an obscure one, but yeah, it is. Spike shrugged. Sounds as good as any, though.
Oh, good.
Thorax made a pleased grin. Though I should probably point out that Thornton does have a similar sound to Thorax. Thorax chuckled and rolled his disguised blue eyes.
I told you changelings aren't the best at creativity.
Actually, I'm not so sure about that, Spike remarked, and he gave his changeling friend an encouraging grin. Maybe it's more that you're just not practiced at it. But I'm thinking that you might have more creativity in you than you give yourself credit for.
Well,
Thorax didn't sound convinced.
I guess we'll see.
Good thing it looks like we're going to have plenty of opportunities to find out, huh? Thorax grinned forlornly.
One way to put a silver lining on it.
Spike leaned against Thorax's side again. We really need one. Thorax sighed, giving the upset dragon a comforting squeeze.
Yeah, we do.